Martin, will you shut that door right there and we'll go ahead and get started. Hope everybody got some lunch. I guess first, this is the subcommittee of General Government Appropriations, and we'll go ahead and get started. Insurance, do y'all want to go? I know the commissioner is having some dental work done and is not able to be with us today. Are y'all ready to go? All right, well, come on down and line up. And we hope he gets everything, it goes well, and he's back on soon.
Yeah, I think it's the first time someone would rather be in front of an appropriations subcommittee.
I was going to say, I was kind of thinking the same thing. I'd rather be in front of an appropriations subcommittee than I had a dentist chair, so I'll have to remember that next time.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you all for having us today. Like he said, Commissioner King is unfortunately unable to be with us today because he had a medical procedure scheduled, but he sends his regards. I'm Martin Sullivan. I'm the Chief of Staff / Chief Deputy Commissioner, and I joined the department with Commissioner King on July 1st of this year. I know it's the intention of the committee to go line by line through the budget, so I am at this point going to turn it over to Chad DeBella, our CFO, who knows this budget backwards and forwards. And also for questions, we have Merritt Beavers. You'll hear Chad talk a lot about the need for IT improvements, and we have Merritt Beavers, our IT director, who can go into more details of those for any questions you might have.
Okay. All right, Chad.
Good afternoon. So I don't have a presentation, but I'm just going to start with the line items and go down one by one. So for amended fiscal year 2020, looking at 29.1.2.
Hold on, Chad. Let me make sure everybody, that's going to be on page 13 on the amended and 14 in the 21. Okay. Sorry about that.
So on 29.1.2 is one-time funds for the commissioner that we're currently paying the additional salary for. That is one-time funds, and it's the salary and fringes, and it's not continuing over into fiscal year 2021. For enforcement program, 29.2.2, there's a reduction of $90,470. We took two positions and combined them. We took general counsel, administrative procedures, and our industrial loan director, and we made it one position. And that $90,000 reflects the general counsel who retired, and that's the reduction in that one position there because we spread that out over three. Within safety fire, you'll see 29.3.2 reduced funds for a vacant position of $311,000. That is positions for the elevator law proposal that we are doing. We currently Martin, who is the senator who's sponsoring the bill?
Chairman Burt Jones.
So Chairman Burt Jones is sponsoring a bill to change the elevator law, which will go into more detail in fiscal year 2021, but that is allowing us not to fill those positions in this fiscal year and hopefully going forward while meeting our current duties. On 29.3.3, provide one-time funds for motor vehicles and information technology improvements. So on the motor vehicles, that's $100,000. That will, those vehicles are for our arson investigators, and so we currently have 6 arson investigators in cars, which means that they have to carry around hazardous materials in the car with them, carcinogenics. At least my tongue allowed me to say that correctly this time. And so we have 6 of those, so that's not good for them carrying them around. The $100,000 would allow us to get 3 vehicles because they're post-certified officers and they have lights on the vehicles. We would take those 3 vehicles and repurpose them within the agency for employees who currently have high mileage. How we determine employees who get reimbursed high mileage is an employee who receives at least $7,500 in reimbursements in a, I don't want to say a calendar year, but in a 1 year's time period. Because the cost of a car is about $20,000, and the life of a car is 5 to 7 years, so we recoup that within 2 years. We currently have 10 employees who we're reimbursing over $7,500. We're also, which is going to help out that cause, we're getting 8 cars from the Department of Audits for free. They're transferring over their pool to us, so that's how we're going to accomplish getting the rest of the high mileage employees' vehicles. On the other $100,000 for one-time IT initiatives, it is for an inspection system for our safety fire area. That's for our safety engineers, and they inspect elevators, carnivals, boilers, and chairlifts in the state of Georgia. Also, our hazardous materials area, which they do racetracks, blasting requirements, and the fireworks for the state of Georgia. And then we have plan review. That's who reviews the plans who come in that we then review for approval for the occupational licenses for state buildings. So this system will upgrade that and also allow us to receive our plans electronically. Currently, right now, we receive them in paper form. They're walked over or mailed to us. When I say walked over, from JISFIC and State Properties Commission, they actually walk over their plans to us. We have a full-time employee doing nothing but scanning in the plans and then turning around, and we have a company that destroys the plans. So by going electronic, then we can repurpose that position to actually help our plan review era out into logging plans when they come in electronically to help catch us up on that backlog. Moving forward to industrial loan, if you look at 29.4.1, that's the minor change, but if you look at 29.4.2, reduce funds for one vacant position, that's what I was speaking to earlier when we have the 3 positions for one, and that is the savings captured from no longer having a director of industrial loan. Moving on to insurance regulation. Reduce funds for one vacant position, 29.5.2. That also alludes to what I talked about earlier, the 3 positions for one. That's our insurance, our administrative procedure. We've also stopped sending cases for OSA over because they started charging a different price this year. And since we have a legal team with general counsel, that expense was projected to be about $70,000, and so we're going to save that by doing that in-house moving forward this fiscal year and next as well. We also have, I'm getting old, 29.5.3, which is reduce funds for the computer charges to reflect and program expenditures. That was for a surplus line system that we were going to put on hold, but that money is now in the 29.5.4 for the one-time funds for information technology improvements that you see on that line for $700,000. These $700,000 is going to cover a bunch of areas. One area that I will go into detail, and I will let our CIO talk about the other areas, is our surplus line system. So explain our surplus line system. It's insurance. First, you have admitted companies, which is your everyday that you use, your car, your policy, your health, and your life insurance. Surplus lines is specialty insurance. So a football player who wants to remain in college another year will insure his arm, like a quarterback, or anything from a multinational oil company. Currently, how we receive everything for the surplus lines is it's on an honor system. The companies they mail in everything, so everything comes in paper, and with this system now, there's 11 other states on it. Everything will be electronic, so we will go completely paperless on this. And the insurance companies are already using it with the other states, so we predict revenue to go up anywhere from $500,000 a year to $5 million a year because we're going to start getting all the reporting on it. For the other portion of the $700K in initiatives, I'm going to ask Merritt to come up and speak about that. Okay.
So the first things that we were looking at is, well, let me back up a second. I came on board with the Insurance Commission about 3 months ago to help evaluate and understand what their IT infrastructure needs are. And part of the evaluation, we've assessed that essentially their technology for infrastructure is between 15 and 20 years old. Most of the applications are homegrown, meaning they're not supportable. The people that developed them are gone. They're based on technology that was current in the early 2000s. Security was not a part of the thinking when these applications were developed. So a lot of the things that we're focused on now is bringing the systems current, addressing the issues of cybersecurity and other types of technology advancements that we're far behind in. So the first thing that we're looking at is a basic foundation for the department, which is their network infrastructure, and bring that current. Right now, it is designed based on 90s technology and is basically wide open for cyber attack. We'll look at fixing that. The next area is looking at your writing. What is that?
Website.
Oh, yeah. So the website was developed in early 2000s. It was a homegrown application that needs to be essentially replaced. The person that developed it is no longer here. A lot of the department's billing applications are built into the website based on Access 2000. So those kinds of things need to be replaced with real applications. The next thing we're looking at is cyber monitoring services. So there's nobody actually looking at our system or monitoring to see what the traffic coming in and out. Also, we don't look at once, let's say a malware or something would get into the department, we don't have any monitoring to look to see whether it's moving between computer to computer. So all the basics of cyber monitoring, we have none. We have a number of applications that were, as it was saying, home-built or not designed for the departments that we're actually using them on. We've taken applications that were used in other agencies and tried to apply them to the insurance. They're not really good fits. We're looking to replace them with applications that actually do insurance agency and fire safety type applications. We want to move our import of building drawings. Right now, they have to be scanned or printed by the requesters. They come in large rolls that are about 3 to 4 feet long. They have to be scanned back in once we get them. They're marked up. Then we have to store those or destroy them and then send back paper copies to these people. So we need to modernize, deal with digital images as everybody else does. Then backup and storage. Right now, we do not have a disaster recovery, so if for some reason our server room catches fire, we're out of business. So a business that is $1.6 billion needs to have true backup and recovery. That's essentially the main things.
All right. Thank you. Questions? Chairman Perkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your presentation. And I do appreciate the need to upgrade your the technology that we're using and the scanning and then destroying. I know is time-consuming and it's laborious and it's inefficient. We heard a presentation this morning from GTA. Are we going through GTA for some of this technology because we had standalone systems prior, and now we're trying to get upgraded on our systems and the inputs that we need to be efficient. Are we using GTA 1? Second, a follow-up on that, Mr. Chairman.
Yep.
I just had to buy a new truck for my farm. And I couldn't pay for it. I'm still not sure I'm going to be able to, but I spread the cost of that truck out over 5 years, and I'm better able to swallow it a little bit at the time. And normally, when we purchase capital goods here, we'll see a bond package. It'll go over 5 years, and the same with the $700,000 for this technology upgrade, and then 200 including some funds for motor vehicles and such. And it looked like we're just taking a big bite of that at one go round. Is there any particular reason that these were not included in our bond package? I'm not sure that it even rises to the level if there's, you know, $1 million threshold or just whatever, but it just seems that normally in other agencies, when we purchase vehicles, there's part of a bond package in the procuring of those and spreading those out over a 5-year period.
So to answer the second question, I completely agree with you on the vehicles, that could be purchased with bonds, and that is a route that we could go if that's the way that it goes. On the software portion of it, we did look at bonds. However, this is subscription-based, and when you're using bonds, you can't use it on subscription-based software, so I really wanted to. But unfortunately, a lot of the software is going to subscription-based and then with a maintenance fee on there going forward. And so a lot of the software companies are getting out of the buy it in one big shot and then move forward with a small maintenance package.
Okay, I just misunderstood when he mentioned, you know, our on-site storage when it goes, then, you know, whatever goes. But so you're looking at replacing this on-site storage to a different type of cloud-based storage. Okay, that I understand. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
On the same topic there of the vehicles, what will be the savings that'll be realized from those vehicles?
Well, off the top of my head, you'd have 6 people at $7,500 a year. So take 7,500 times 6 times, let's say 3 years. Let's say the car only lasts 3 years because the first 2's a break even. I learned not to trust math in my head a long time ago, so I don't.
Okay, I got the path you're going. Okay. And then we had a different situation at the Department of Revenue, but by my math, you guys only took a 3.36% cut in this amended budget. I was just curious if you had any comment on why it wasn't the full 4 like recommended.
I would assume it's probably with the increase we're seeing in the special fraud department.
No, that's 2021. And so it would be the one-time funds for in administration for the duplicate salary commissioner that we're paying.
Okay. All right. Anybody else on the amended questions before he jumps over? All right. We'll let you keep rolling.
So for fiscal year 2021, looking at department administration, you'll see 29.1, you know what? I can't see. 29.1.3 and 29.1.4. I'm sorry, 0.3. This is the first time wearing glasses, so you have to excuse me. Okay, 29.1.4 and 29.1.5 is a reflection of organizational structure and reduction in rent. So instead of going over rent for every program, what we're doing is we're moving off of we currently have 3 floors at the Sloppy Floyd building, and we're getting rid of one of those floors and going to 2. And so we're having rent reductions. When Commissioner King came in, the first thing he said was instead of laying off people, he wanted to reduce rent because we had the available space and not cut services. And so right now, we have people moving, and I'm pretty sure that I am hated agency-wide across my agency right now. On the personnel reduction, that is what I spoke about earlier. about combining job duties. The chief of staff and the deputy chief insurance commissioner is now one role instead of two. Also, our communications and legislative liaison is one role. And then something else that is going to be effective next year too, that's going to affect all programs. When we talked about scanning earlier of plans, we previously had a staff of 5 people that did nothing but scan all day long. And we are now moving paperless, and we have gotten rid of those we have repurposed those employees to other parts of the agencies that had backlogs. And so that's going to affect some of this going forward. Also, a savings there is we're updating our records management retention schedule. It has been since 1976 was the last time it was updated, and that's an expense that we're going to try to get rid of by destroying boxes that we have housed at the Board of Regents. Moving on to enforcement, you see a reduction there on line 29.2.1. That is that 90,000 again from last time of the general counsel retired, and we have one person doing 3 different positions. So that's the same expense moving forward. On safety fire, you'll see the reduction of 401,583 on 29.3.2. That is the elevator law change that was referenced earlier. And if the law changes from biannual to annual on elevator inspections, then we won't have a need to fill those positions. To speak a little bit about the law change, we currently inspect elevators twice a year. And by going to once a year, there's really no statistics behind why we can't go to once a year. It's not accident driven. It's not there. Most other states are doing once a year, and there's even some states doing every 18 months. In order to staff that properly, besides the amount that we're giving up, we would need another 20 additional positions to get statewide coverage. We're only at 30% right now. And so by changing the law, we'll get to about 95% coverage, which means actually in that area, the revenue will go up a little bit because we charge to go out and inspect the elevators, and we'll actually be able to hit all the rural areas going forward that we're currently not hitting right now.
Quick question on that. So what happens if we don't get the legislation passed this session
Then we continue to do inspections at 30%.
without the positions?
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
I can't see. Also within safety fire, we're transferring funds from the insurance regulation program from one deputy state fire marshal position and associated operating expenses. You'll see that of $206,256. That is coming over so we can align our safety fire area more accurately. We have over 500 fire stations that we serve. We just recently updated code, and it hasn't been done in the last 10 years. This position will come in and be a code-centric position, also help with leadership and to get everything lined. We have, of the areas I was speaking about earlier, the 5 or 6 departments, there's no director in those departments, and instead of hiring a director for each department, we wanted to bring in a deputy to oversee all of those. In industrial loan, you'll see the line item to move it out, 29.4 in total. OPB did this based on 2 findings. One was from the 2018 audit report that recommended industrial loan move over to banking and finance for more efficiencies. And then FY17, a zero-based budget was done, also showing efficiencies of moving it over. We support the governor's budget on that, but at the same time, we will do whatever the Senate and the House and the governor wants us to do. If it does remain with the agency, then we would like to ask for the 176,721 back to the program so we can have full money to fund it. In the program insurance regulation, you'll see reduced funds for personnel services to reflect the elimination of one vacant position of 103,000. We had a call center director, and that call center director is no longer with us, and that position moved over to our consumer services. So that position was combined with another to reflect the savings there. And then also the reduction in funds for rental. You'll also see on 29.5.4 the transfer of funds to the special fraud program, and that is moving. So special fraud is going to become its own program now. From the 2018 audit report, the auditors found there was a lot of audit findings in it for misallocation of funds, and so by moving it to its own program, this is going to make that more transparent going forward. And then in special fraud, you'll see that movement from insurance regulation. And then you'll also see an increase of $1.5 million on 29.6.2. That is additional funding that we asked for. That money comes directly from the insurance industry. And so it's put in our budget as, it's allocated in our budget as state funds, but we collect all the special fraud money in the first 3 months, and it's all returned to Treasury. That will get us an additional 13 positions within special fraud, 11 post-certified investigators, and 2 additional admin staff. Right now, we currently receive about 5,000 case referrals a month from the NAIC, that's the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, and with our current staff, we can't even touch half the cases. With the additional agents coming in, we'll at least be able to touch all the cases, but the case workload will still be over, but at least we'll be able to investigate all the cases as well going forward. And then one last note is for all the increases you see in there for the $1,000 raises, the budget is reflected accurately in there from OPB, and we have 21 positions.
Okay. All right, questions? I'll start real quick while everybody's thinking. On the move, we got a couple of moves, I guess. The move from DCA, the industrialized building folks, under to you guys. Have y'all had any conversations about that? Does that require legislation? Do you have the ability to do it, the funds to do it, the people, so that there's a smooth transition? Do you have any info on that?
We're actually meeting on Wednesday to discuss it with DCA, everything coming over. From my understanding, it would take a bill change to do it. And then also the general thought process behind it is we have an area called manufactured housing where we inspect mobile homes. And with this coming over, we're already this occurs in the places where we're already inspecting mobile homes. And so we would already be there, but on Wednesday, I'm going to have confirmation of this more and more. The state funds stayed with DCA, but the other funds would be coming to us. I believe they're contracting it out, and we could potentially have the manpower to do it with existing personnel.
Okay. And I guess along the same lines, the move of industrial loan away from you guys. We've been told that there may be some legislation. Any more updates on that since we've last talked, or?
We have not seen the bill, but we are told, as y'all, that there is probably one in the works.
Okay. And I guess I asked that because when it comes to elevators, we've got a bill and we've got an author.
We've got a bill and an author. And since this is a program that is a recommendation that's coming from OPB, we are letting them take the lead on it.
Okay. All right. Let's get anything going here. Chairman Barr.
Thank you, sir. Would you just maybe give us a little more detail on the special fraud and those folks, and just to give us a little more explanation on that? I definitely, I've heard recently that Georgia has especially high, insurance rates because we do have a lot of fraud, and I'm concerned about that. Can you explain a little bit more on that?
Sure. So basic things. So actually, Georgia and Florida are number 1 and 2 for insurance fraud in the nation, according to the National Association of Insurance Commissioners. And it cost each Georgia family roughly between $400 and $700 in extra premiums on all their different cases. So especially with Commissioner King's background in law enforcement, he is committed to building up that department and going out, and not just right now, we're pretty fully covered in the metro area, but hiring agents to be able to focus on insurance fraud around the state, have regional offices, and we're able to do that without actually opening a full office, with his relationships with sheriffs, different police chiefs, hopefully opening and just, having a desk where they can sit there and work. And also with technology these days, they're able to work out of their homes, but that way we can have somebody in their communities, in their neighborhoods, that are working with the district attorneys, so when they hand over a case, they hand everything ready to go and ready to be prosecuted. So this would allow us to hire 11 more agents. The industry is behind this move because, again, it costs them and it costs citizens, and so we think this is a win-win. So the 1.2 million for it, 1.5, will allow us to hire 11 more agents and 2 more support staff for them. And our goal, like I said, would be to put them around the state and not just in Metro Atlanta.
And a follow-up to that, so if we're hiring 11, do you know the number we currently have?
22? Yeah, right around 22.
Okay.
We just had a couple more start, so we are. That has been a huge emphasis of the commissioner to make sure we have that area fully staffed.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Chairman Perkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Regarding manpower, that's wanted to piggyback on Chairman Barr's question. So you're increasing the special fraud by 50%, the post-certified fraud investigators in that particular department because we are behind and we do need to get caught up. The Department of Insurance has their hands in a lot of areas and are quite busy, and I do understand that. And one of the concerns I have is one in the consolidation of your of services and insurance regulations. So you're eliminating a position and combining there with consumer protection, and I want to do more with less, quite honestly. But if you look at what we're doing with our elevator inspections, and right now we're at 30%, and so we're wanting to go to, rather than every 6 months, going to once a year, and my math's not the best in the world, but it looks like that might get you up to 60%, and we're going to eliminate some vacant positions on that. So we're going to be stressed on that as well.
So the 30% that's 30% of heading every elevator twice a year. So if I'm not mistaken, we hit most of them once a year, the 95%, but it's where we get back is getting it to them twice a year, is where the 30% number comes from. Did that make sense?
Also, the windshield time is cut
That's
down
right.
dramatically in going out to the different areas.
Well, with the additional pressure on our manpower in that division, I know they're not overlapping, but there again, that Chairman Watson had mentioned about moving, transferring another division, industrialized building, to you in a department that's working pretty good now. The learning curve to get, are those positions you think gonna, in the streamlined of the I don't know what kind of data or technology they use currently, but is that going to be a seamless transition? There again, I'm concerned about if we have more work now that we've not been able to get to. If we add an additional division to it, it makes it problematic in my estimation.
I mean, that's a great question, and to be honest, I don't know until I meet with them on Wednesday at noon, and after that, I'd be more than happy, if the committee is okay, I'll send over a whole summary and my findings on that, on how that transaction would affect us.
Well, thank you.
And our
Yeah.
inspectors that would be doing the inspections, from our understanding, with the division moving over. It's our mobile housing unit. So they don't do any of the inspections currently on carnival rides, elevators, boilers. So that's a whole separate division under our safety fire department.
Yeah, and I was just sitting here thinking about that. I get those moves as well as how does that affect our state employees that work in those divisions and where they reside in their home, and how are they going to have to be relocated, or do we know any of that yet?
No, but like Chad said, we will make sure we get y'all a report
Okay.
after we meet with them on Wednesday.
Okay. All right. Well, then I guess that goes for both the industrial loan move and the you're meeting with just the industrial DCA on Wednesday, right?
Yes, sir. We've already had conversations with banking and finance, and so they understand what we have, where the people, I've given them where the employees currently live, where they reside. So banking and finance has all the information from us, and their commissioner could speak on how the efficiencies would affect
Okay.
their area.
All right. One last one, I guess, for me. Y'all provided some information on some positions that were not filled, I guess some engineers and fire safety. They haven't been filled. Do you know how long they've been vacant, or do you have any details on those positions?
So are you referring to the additional money that was given in last year's budget?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Those, obviously, since July 1st, we just filled 3 safety engineers, and we have 3 more starting, and some of that's from the initiative that the Senate and House gave, along with replacements. For the building inspectors, we have interviews this week. We previously had people who were applying, but they did not qualify for the jobs, and so we have revised our standards on that so we can meet qualifications. We have a contract through DCH for the nursing homes, and there's certain certifications, and so we're having the company come in to give out the certification to current employees, and also issuing certification pay for employees as to attract applicants, and that pool exploded. So we have 3 interviews next week, or maybe that's this week, because I was talking to HR last week. On the plan review side, those 2, that's a whole different category. And since we've been advertising it in October, we've had 1 person apply. And so, and that person who applied, we tried to get them on a phone interview, and then they just never called. And so we're currently working with DOAS right now. I believe we need to restructure the job code and not necessarily be an engineer, but more of an architect. And so HR and I have talked this morning about that, and because the easy answer would be we just need to increase the salary. And I believe that we do not need to increase the salary. I believe that we need to approach it from a different method, and that's reclassify the job code and the requirements, and then also get out to technical colleges and do career fairs so we can get interns in and folks like that to get that program up and coming before I just come to you and say, I need more money.
Right, right. And that's where we have a pretty large backlog of folks we're trying to get to, right, to approve projects, to let them go ahead and...
Yes,
and,
Mr. Chairman.
Okay. All right.
And also part of the electronic plan review, that will help, because that 1 person that's doing nothing but scanning, we can then refocus that person to actually start logging plans, and that backlog can start coming down. So that's the long-term goal of those one-time IT initiatives as well there.
Okay. Chairman Smith?
Thank you. Thank y'all for your presentation. This goes to the previous insurance commissioner who's still continued on the payroll. Is there any indication of when that might be resolved, and can you give us an idea of what we're talking about by way of dollars and benefits there?
Unfortunately, we don't have any insight to when BJ Pack will be able to take that court to trial. Obviously, just like y'all, we would like to see it wrapped up as soon as possible. So the 1st and the 15th every month, we're not having to pay his salary. But he has a salary of 120 plus benefits, which equals about to be 190, which you see in is the one-time addition in our administrative funds for FY 2020.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. One final comment. I noticed as well in our 21 here that y'all didn't quite take a full 6 cut. Could you have any comments on why that was not so, or?
Yes, sir. In the insurance regulation program, the full 6% was not given because of the previous system I talked about earlier, the surplus line system. That is a lease. And
Okay.
so they left it enough so that we can continue that lease into the next year to continue doing that, to fund that, to get that online.
Okay.
And obviously, if we don't see the success like it's reported to, with the additional somewhere between $500,000 to $5 million, we would not continue that system.
Okay. Chairman Clark?
I was just going to answer the question. I know there's a question I was asked about we're paying two salaries to two different commissioners. And I know that there's a House Bill 742 that was dropped that talks about if suspended like he is, then there would be no pay, unless it's shown that, not guilty, then there'd be back pay. So that would be a fix, I think.
With our office, we see that legislation as a positive step to rooting out corruption in state government.
Good. All right. Anybody else? All right. Well, y'all did a good job. We'll let the commissioner know.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Next, we've got Department of Labor. Commissioner Butler, come on down. The commissioner will be on page 15 in the amended tracking sheet and page 16. Actually, just flip a page over for everybody can get there.
You say, come on down, I was expecting to win a prize.
Yeah, there's not a lot of prizes floating around here right now, Commissioner.
You say that twice. Okay. All right, I'm not going to really kind of go through this line by line. Just kind of get kind of a snapshot of the amended and then the large budget, and unless, of course, obviously if somebody wants some greater detail, then we'll dive into that to try to be brief on this as much as possible. As you can see, in the amended budget, we have, a bunch of reductions. Well, actually, on that one, we have, a little bit of both. We have some money that was put in for the raises, also some money that was taken out. The issue with some of this is going to be the fact that the amount of monies that were put in our budget for the $1,000 raises for our employees that were making $40,000 less doesn't quite cover it. We've had this discussion before. To give you an example, last year in the big budget, they put in for a 2% raise, as y'all all remember, and we were only given a very, very small amount to institute the 2% raise, so therefore we had to come up in our own budget the balance of that, and it was about an additional $831,000 that we had to come up with, which actually would go into the amended budget too, or actually count against it, which that's not actually accounted for in the document because that's just in our money that we currently have, but we had to identify that money somewhere within the department in order to fund the 2% raise. And so when you come into this next bit with a $1,000 raise for everybody making 40, the same thing happened yet again, where they gave us, less than $200,000 for about a $1.2 million raise. And so then you're talking about we're having to come up with basically, another $900,000 out of our budget from somewhere to be able to fulfill that. Now, that's just, that stuff that's not even on the paper between the amended and the big budget. That's, you're talking $1.7 million that we've had to identify over the last two budget cycles in order to fulfill raises that were put in our budget. That money takes away from either, current positions that we have that now are, basically unfunded because we have to use that money for the raises or whatnot. And then you take on top of that the amount of monies that were cut in our budget that you all see before you right now across the board. And I believe you were talking about percentages, and correct me if I'm wrong, Chairman, you may have got different math on there, but we came up with about 4.83 in the amended and about 8.35 in the big budget. as far as the amount of reductions we've got. You know, and we actually asked to be spared any further reductions in our budget, namely because, you know, over the last 8 years, we've had to endure roughly about $50 million in reductions from our federal side. And that's the biggest part of what we're funded is coming out of the feds. It's about 89% of our budget is basically federal. And all the state funds that you see in this document come from one fund source, and that's the administrative assessment. It's a very, very small percentage that we pull out of unemployment taxes that we collect from Georgia's employers with the intended use to fund the operations of the Department of Labor. And so when you take more those monies out of our budget, you're actually diverting more funds that were prescribed for that particular use. It's a federally allowed program that they allow us to do that because normally you are not allowed to touch any unemployment taxes that you collect. It has to go straight into the trust fund. You cannot touch it. You can't spend it on anything but benefits. But years and years ago, I think it goes all the way, gosh, I'm trying to think about who the commissioner was when that all went down, but it's way, way before my time. Heck, it may be even before I was born. When the nation was going through a similar time like we're having right now, and federal funds got reduced to such a point, they allowed the states to institute this type of program to take a little, less than 1%, it's like 0.06% of tax collections, and take that money and earmark it to basically replace lost federal funds to kind of keep you at a baseline during these type of times. Well, over the years, a lot of that money has been borrowed to help fill other agencies' holes. Well, our problem is we're getting hit now on both sides. We're still losing federal funding here and there, and now we're also losing state funding too. And to give you an example of what that looks like, since I've been commissioner, and I'm not even talking about the departments that have moved from Department of Labor, like safety inspections, voc rehab, and workforce, but just Department of Labor, specific. When I first got elected, I think we had a little over 2,200 employees. Today, right now, on staff, we have less than 1,100. So that's over half our workforce we've reduced since I've been labor commissioner, a little over 10 years or so. So we've done a lot of staff reductions over the years, and quite frankly, a lot of the stuff that's in the budget document talking about doing more staff reductions. We're already doing that. And have been doing that historically. Matter of fact, we've got an ongoing project that we've been working on for the last 5 years, but we haven't made a whole lot of headway in because it's been very hard for us to predict how much federal funding we're going to get. As you're all aware with how the federal government has done their budgets recently, you'll have a 60-day continuing resolution, a 90-day one, and so with us, we're kind of sitting around going, we don't know how much money we're going to have for the next, after 90 days. And so a lot of long-term planning has had to be put off. Well, right now, we've kind of gotten to the point to where we can see a little bit of a long-term plan. Right now, we're funded fairly all the way to October 1st. And so we've started instituting a lot of the stuff that we've been working on for 5 or 6 years, and that is going back and going through each department in each section and take a look at the salaries that we're currently paying. And the reason why we're doing this is, yes, we do have a lot of open positions right now, but we're not holding them open because we're trying to bank money, okay? We're holding them open because we can't fill them, and we're trying to, but people are just not taking the salaries that we're offering right now in this economy. And so we're doing a multi-pronged approach to fix that. First of all, we're taking a look at each particular section and looking at the ones that are the hardest to fill first, that we need the most, that we have the biggest manpower shortage in. We're going through and looking at how many positions we're currently funded for. We're cutting back some of those positions, taking some of that money and rolling it back. And we right now, I think on the 16th of this month, some of our tax folks are going to be seeing some significant raises in their pays. Try to get them up somewhere reasonably close to market, so that way we can retain people that we have and also attract more. But we need to do this throughout the entire agency. Right now, we did a study internally looking at other state agencies and private sector equivalents, and a lot of our pay scales are about 42% under market, and that's conservative, okay? So it's very hard to hire. And the other thing that we're doing in that same vein, while we're also trying to increase these salaries, we're also moving every possible Now, this is an administrative job. These are not service jobs like in a service, like in a career center, but every job that we have here in downtown Atlanta at my office that we can move out of Atlanta into a place that possibly has a little bit less less cost of living. We're doing that right now and stationing those individuals in our career centers around the state. So you can kind of call that rural sourcing if you want to. So we're taking our call center operations. We're going to be moving those to somewhere, probably in 2 locations: South Georgia, North Georgia. Maybe it may be South Georgia, Central Georgia, but we have to look at a bunch of different pieces of formula. Like, where do we have space that we already are paying rent on? Also, where do we have the best available workforce that we can hire from? Because you can't go into an area that's already at 2% unemployment, because we're not going to be able to find anybody. So we're trying to find something that's a little bit better than that. And also, a lot of our positions that have historically been stationed in Atlanta that farther back in history used to be out in the career centers, we're actually pushing them back out into the career centers also for that same reason. Like your hearing officers. Years ago, your hearing officers, when you used to have to come into our office to have an unemployment hearing, when you were fighting an unemployment claim, you used to have to go physically into the office and sit down in front of a hearing officer. Then we changed to phones, and once they went to the phones, they started doing all those positions here in Atlanta. Well, now, because nobody will take those jobs for what we're paying and come to downtown Atlanta, we're starting to push those jobs back out into rural Georgia. So maybe we can be a little bit more competitive when it comes to that. And also, quite frankly, I think we'll get better service also, because you'll have hearing officers that are located in the regions in which they're doing these hearings, and they'll have a little bit better feel for what's going on in the economy and the workforce in that area. And I know that was a lot of information I just dumped on you.
Yeah, it was. It was. Let's see, where do we start? I guess I want to start. Did you say you needed $900,000 to cover the $1,000 raises?
Really, one of the things that didn't make sense in the budget with the pay raises were, it's like, if you're talking about helping us to do that raise and say you need to give every person who makes less than $40,000 a $1,000 a year raise, and then you give us, and then of course the excuse was, well, we can't fund your federal funds, so we can only give you the state portion. Well, to me, the administrative assessments, well, that was collected for that reason, so they should put that in there. Well, and my argument would be, then don't do the cut, because if you left the cut alone, not even add money to our budget, if you just left us alone and didn't cut us, then with that little bit amount they added in there, we could probably fund that raise internally. But to be quite frank, we're probably going to ignore that language anyway, because the project that we're doing internally is going to take a couple of years, but it's going to provide more than $1,000 a year raise, hopefully. Like, for example, the one section that we've already done, we went from 78 positions to 70 positions, and several people that work in that division are going to see $5,000 a year raises by doing that, okay? Now, that doesn't mean 70 people this month are going to see $5,000 a month raises, because I still have to fill a whole bunch of those positions, because nobody will take those jobs. Just like Department of Insurance said, we've had, we're taking 4 to 6 months to fill a position. And quite frankly, some of the people that we're getting that are applying for the jobs, you probably wouldn't hire in your business. Not all of them. We're still searching and working pretty hard, but when you're talking about trying to hire somebody in downtown Atlanta and you're telling them they're only going to make $36,000 a year, and that's being on the high side, they're going to walk on you.
Yeah, well, and I was going to ask you about that, and I'm glad you brought it up, because it seemed like that might be a better idea, instead of just, because you've got a lot of vacancies. And I guess when you eliminated these vacancies, that I would think that causes problems. So is it not better use of our money to raise the salaries in some of those other positions to keep those folks there?
Well,
and so I'm glad to hear that you're doing that.
There's three major reasons why we have as many vacancies as we do now. The first one is that we've had a lot of turnover, either through resignations or people retiring. And then people are not wanting to take the jobs for the pay in this particular economy. So we had a very hard time replacing people once we lose them. So it makes it very difficult. Also, we've had to be very cautious about doing very big chunks of hiring because the unpredictability of our federal dollars has been such to where if we went out and hired every single, like say if you had 100 positions and right now you're sitting at 70 and you went out there and went crazy and hired all 30 and then you found out, 3 months from now that they're going to do a 3% reduction in your federal funds, then you got to turn right back around and lay off about 10, 15 people. And so that makes it very, very difficult. So yeah, you do have to bank and give at least we do because we're so dependent on federal dollars. You have to have a little bit of wiggle room. But then also we've been banking some of that so we can save up enough dollars to do the projects like I'm telling you about, where we can take and go and look at the positions, cut X amount of them, take the excess dollars and then roll those dollars into raises or raising up the base pay, I should say, actually, for employees that we currently have and are going to hire so we can retain and hire. So that's the big three reasons why, we're not banking it just because we want to have money sitting around, and have a party with it. We're not. This money is being used, it's being spent. I can promise you this, our federal dollars, when, we get 3 years to spend them, we're not sending any money back. It's getting spent. So it's not like we've got too much money. And we spend it all.
Well, with the vacancies that you have, being that they're all eliminated, is that going to affect any of your services? Because you have
Our
such a high...
services are already affected because, these numbers right here about reductions really don't mean anything because we haven't been able to hire. We need more money to raise up salaries so we can get our vacancies filled. That's our big problem right now is, our pay scales are just not up. And that's horrible to say that as Department of Labor. Quite frankly, we have some positions, which this really kind of stinks. We have one particular part of our agency right now that is 100% federally funded. It's all federal dollars that funds every single position in it. And they tell us how many positions we can have and how much money we're going to have. So you're captive to how much money that you can pay them. Well, half the time we're getting these people in, we're getting them hired, we're getting them trained, and then of all things, the federal government is hiring them away from us and almost doubling their salary. It's like I'm the farm team. We're paying them farm team salaries, and then we get them trained and get them going, and then they turn around and hire them. Which is good for it's good for them. I'm not complaining about that, but I wish they would say, hey, Commissioner Butler, we're going to give you X amount of dollars, but we're going to let you figure out how many people you need to get the job done, and you figure it out so you can set the salaries. But that one right there, we're kind of captive on. There's not much I can do with it.
Okay. Chairman Barr.
I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I got to go back to the 900,000 shortfall. So you have certain employees, just so I understand this, so you have certain employees that receive funds or you pay them partially through federal funds. Is it a partial or is it fully through federal funds, the under 40,000? I'm still trying to completely understand that part of it.
I'm gonna super oversimplify this because actually how we pay our employees.
That works good for me. I've got 4 kids.
The best way to explain it is a lot of our employees probably get paid like an accountant or an attorney. And how that works is we have some employees, like this one sitting right here, Janelle, she works on our budget staff. She actually gets paid through probably how many fund sources? Oh, well, how many is that? It's about 6? About 6 different fund sources. So like when she's working on the veterans grant, charge that. When she's working on the UI stuff in the budget, she's charging that. When she's working on reemployment Wagner-Pfizer money, she's charging that grant. So she has to keep up with how much time she works on each grant and charge it to that grant. And a lot of our employees, especially our career center employees, that's how they're paid also. And some of that's also going to be state monies too. Like for example, if there's a particular type of job that we're doing that you cannot charge to the Wagner-Pfizer grant, which is reemployment, and or UI grant, then we have to charge it somewhere else. And we have a very little bit of money that's federal, that's flexible, that we can kind of charge a lot of different things to. But one of our biggest programs, customized recruitment, that is used to help economic development when we bring in a company like SK Innovations that's just located in Northeast Georgia. One of the things that was offered to them to come to Georgia was our customized recruitment program, and that was one of the things that helped them sign on the dotted line. Sure. We can use a little bit of federal money to help with that, but a lot of that money is coming from these so-called state dollars, which are actually part of our tax collections. we can use that money for those type of projects. So when you're cutting that kind of money out, it takes away a lot of flexibility to do some innovative programs that other states are not doing.
Gotcha. And then one follow-up. On your percentage that you use, and I apologize, I didn't write the percentage that you collect that you get to use to help run your department. Is that set by federal statute or state statute?
Well, it's the U.S. Department of Labor, back when all this happened, they ruled that they would allow states to do this to help with shortfalls. The actual percentage is set by statute. So they require the state to put in statute, and you have to use specific language in the state statute in order for it to be allowed to be used this way. Matter of fact, if you actually read the statute, it actually says that, here's the amount that you're collecting off the taxes. The labor commissioner is authorized to put that money in the treasury, and then I'm to ask the General Assembly, and they shall return that money back to me.
Understand. Thank you.
Commissioner, you mentioned that it was about a 4.83 and a 8.35 cuts on the two budgets. Did you submit a 4 and 6, and
Yes.
it ended up being more than that, or? So you submitted 4 and 6, and it came back 4.83 and 8.35.
And actually, when you're talking about the budget that has the raises, that ends up being way much more than that, because we still, even though it's not a cut, we still have to find the money to fund the rate, if we were going to do that. But I'm telling y'all, and I've already told them, I'm not going to do that, because I just can't. It's just not feasible, and it doesn't go along with a plan that's actually going to fix what's broken. But we just need some stability in our funding. That's the only thing that we're really asking for. Just, we've already been cut and cut and cut and cut, and we've reduced and reduced and reduced. There's no other agency that has reduced their head count by half. I'd be willing to bet. I think we've given at the blood bank, so to say, but we need stability so we can fix a lot of things in the long run. So that way we know what's going to happen 6 months from now with our funding, what's going to happen 12 months now from our funding, which is still unpredictable on the federal side. The last couple of years, it has been semi-predictable with them. Of course, the only thing that used to be predictable was we knew we were going to get hit 5% every single year, and we did, which is the max that they're allowed to cut those. And one thing we try to explain to our congressmen, our U.S. Senator, is when you hear them talking about cutting the U.S. Department of Labor's budget, please remember, they're not going to be reducing jobs in Washington, D.C. They're not going to be reducing, service in Washington, D.C. That's the money that's coming here, that our businesses are paying tax that's going there. So when y'all talk about reducing that, just remember who gets hurt. It's the citizens of Georgia, because that's fewer people in our career centers, that's fewer career centers, and that's fewer people answering the phones, which is where we're at right now. So I know we have some issues with phones and things like that, people calling in, and we're trying to fix it, but it's hard to find anybody who wants the jobs right now. It's very, very challenging. So, we're moving many jobs as we can out to rural Georgia. We're looking at work from home type situations, anything we can to attract somebody.
Anybody else? Well, Commissioner, thank you for being here. Thank you for your report, and we're going to do whatever we can to help you here. I know you got a tough job, so appreciate what you do.
Well, just anything you can do, we appreciate it, Chairman, members of the committee, as always.
All right, thank you. All right, next we've got Office of the Inspector General. Deborah, come on down. Welcome. We don't get to see you very often, so. Hey, well, we're just glad to have you, and maybe if you don't mind, if you can just kind of briefly let the committee know kind of what y'all do over there, and
We brought up.
okay, good, great. All right, y'all are handing that out. Okay, that's fine. Well, you don't get to come very often, so you might as well talk about it. For the committee, if you're looking at track sheets, they are on page 12 and page 12.
Do you not ever get a break? You don't get to take a break?
No break, no break.
So, good afternoon. I'm Deb Wallace. I'm the State Inspector General, and you're right, we don't get to come very often, but it's exciting, and we thank you, Chairman, and for calling us for Friday afternoon and seeing if we can jump through hoops this morning and get over here and talk to you with a little sense. The office, as most of you know in here, was created in 2003, so we just had our 17th birthday. We're tickled about that. And our mission is to promote transparency and accountability in a sexual harassment-free state government. As you know, our jurisdiction is the executive branch agencies, not the legislative or judicial branch. And so you say, well, what do you do over there with what you have? We investigate fraud, waste, abuse, and corruption in any of the 86 or so state executive branch agencies, and that could extend to, several 100,000 state vendors that are doing business with the state entities. It extends to any program that would be involving any state dollar nexus, such as grant funds or something like that. And how do we do what we do? Well, we have a small staff, but it's a smart staff, and without them, I wouldn't be standing here. So I have an attorney, Bethany Wetzel. I have a chief financial officer, Jenna, who's also my deputy inspector general. We have certified fraud examiners, which I'm one, and we have auditors. Now we have two. We have a young man who is a certified forensic computer examiner to help us do computer forensics. So while there's not a ton of us, we feel like the work that we do is really, really important, and it saves you money for every dollar you put in us, as I'm going to show you here this afternoon. We do both criminal investigations and administrative investigations. We also have a little bit different mission than just say like GBI, where they're going out to get the bad apple. We're trying to identify what the bad apple is, who it is, but we also have the responsibility to help the agencies figure out how it happened, how did the fraud happen, and how can we help them shore it up, like if there's weak areas that are, quote, bleeding or gaping holes in internal controls, we have that responsibility to help the agency come up with improvements for ways to do business better so that hopefully the fraud won't happen again, or the policy violation, whatever. I guess we can go to the next one. So this, I'm really proud of this, and on purpose I wanted to go back 5 years. I should have gone back 6, because that's how long you've let me be IG, but for 5 years our return on investment is, I feel it's very impressive. For what few people we have, the work that we're doing, it shows that we are making a difference and having an impact. If you'll follow along with me, just, you see the first column is telling you that's our budget from FY16 over to FY20. And the next one's amount of fraud referred for prosecution. If you'll go all the way over to the right-hand side, you're going to see that we have referred over $31 million worth of fraud in the last 5 years. Now that is substantial for a little bitty unit, and that's why I'm telling you, we may be little, but I feel like we're mighty. At one point, when there was 3 of us in the office, I used to say, we're about as mighty as a 3-pronged fork, but we're mighty and we don't give up. So when you go down to the third column, you see return on investment, and I'm very proud of that too, because each year you're going to see a very nice percentage sign that's way more than what we are entrusted to. So for every dollar that we're entrusted to do this business, we are literally earning our keep 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 11 times over. So that makes me proud to share with you what we do and why we do it. And then that bottom part, outreach and training, to me, that's one of the most critical things that we do. The more people that we talk to in state government, the more, and you know, we got a turnover. You hear it when you hear these other commissioners, you hear about the turnover and the people that are leaving to go to other jobs, and we can't hardly keep them because we don't pay them enough. Well, the more people that we talk to, the more eyes and ears we have, and the more that we can get state employees feeling like they can rely upon us to help make a difference in state government. We're trying to save the state money. We're trying to help make programs run better, and by identifying issues that are, you know, existing. And nobody wants to think about it, but we have issues, so we are helping, you know, identify those issues and try to make improvements. So as you can see from that chart too, as our budget increased little by little, so did our return on investment. And one thing that I like, you know, I was up here back there listening to the former two agency heads or their departments, and those are huge departments with lots of money and lots of operating pieces. I have 10, myself and 9, and you know, for the longest until this year, you'll see that we were barely at $1 million. We treat that money like it's our own, as far as making sure that we are so frugal in the way that we do business, and I'm proud of that too. One thing that you may or may not know that they teach us as certified fraud examiners, according to the Association of Certified Fraud Examiners, the average organization, it wouldn't matter if it was your brownie troop or your church or your a hospital that's operating out here in the county, the average organization loses 5% of its operating budget to fraud. Well, that's not a nice figure when you get to thinking about $27 billion in state government. And obviously, we don't have jurisdiction in all of that area where $27 billion is being expended, just the executive branch. But that's a lot of money. And so for every little dollar that we can help the state identify a problem and get it referred for prosecution, or if it's an administrative investigation and it reveals the need for an agency to change its business practices, well, we're doing the state a favor. The next chart, that's what we've been doing. You know, we had, for the first 16 years, our mission was waste, fraud, abuse, and corruption. And then last year in January, you read in the news, we got a new mission. And, you know, I'm happy to say, I don't know where else they would have put it. I'm glad they gave it to us, because it gave us more of an opportunity to show what we can do with what we have. And this past year, it's a wonder I got any hair, but we rose to the challenge together, and we did everything from create forms to spreadsheets to procedures to train some 350 or so sexual harassment investigators who are designated males and females in the agencies. We had to start figuring out how to make all these agencies report their sexual harassment complaints to one place, one portal, which it had never been done before. And so this is little, and I know you did give them a handout, didn't you? So it's little, but you can see there's, 25 or 27 state agencies on there that we have had sexual harassment cases crop up in. All total, it's 159 so far since we've been counting, since March 1st of last year. We haven't yet had our first audit. That's coming, and we have our audit plan, and we're gearing up for it. And we know that it's, you can't change a culture overnight, so it's going to take it's a process of teaching and training, and getting people to comply with the governor's policy. And so we get all reports. We review every single sexual harassment complaint that we get for impartiality concerns. What does that mean? That means that some of the agencies will actually indicate that they have concerns that they cannot investigate it themselves, and they would like for us to look at it independently of them. Well, we welcome that. Sometimes they indicate that when they really could do it themselves. They're just wanting somebody else to do it, but we look at it to make sure to see whether or not it needs an impartial investigator. Like I said before, we train all the investigators on how to conduct these investigations and to ensure compliance with the overall policy. So I know that's a lot of statistics, but I guess what I want you to see here is that is our added mission responsibility on top of what we already do. And we're rolling with it pretty good, and whenever we come up on a bump or a barrier, we meet and think about it and analyze it and figure out how to get past the bump. The next one, going line by line on the fiscal year 20 budget, it's just three lines. 27.9.1 is a whopping $66 to reflect an adjustment to agency premiums for Department of Administrative Services administered self-insurance programs. 27.9.2, reduce funds for one vacant administrative assistant position effective November 1st. And 27.93, increase funds for 5 positions, $176,910, and operations $70,730 to establish the Sexual Harassment Division. The total change is $200,922. Going forward with a couple of charts, if you'll just bear with me, I'm going to explain the 27.92 about the vacant administrative position, and then the increase in funds for the other positions. So what does that mean for our office? Before we got the new mission that the governor's office entrusted us to, we had myself, Jenna as Deputy Inspector General, and we had admin, Miss Tony, and we had 4 investigators and an auditor, okay? And then January rolls around and we get a new executive order with a new mission that's completely different. You got to understand, I got bean counters, I got auditors and investigators, and we look at fraud, waste, abuse, and corruption. We never had a view of sexual harassment. We didn't have an occasion to get anything in the office, so we didn't know what was happening in the state. And then we started seeing it because they started reporting in through the portal. And it required all of us to really, catch our breath and get grounded and figure out, all right, we got to do this thing, and how are we going to do it? And so we just joined together as an office, and we, like I said earlier, we rose to the challenge with what we had. And in the meantime, this is an analogy that I made talking to budget analysts last summer. I said, if you got 2 candles and you're looking at them and they're burning right here, and one stands for our first primary mission of fraud, waste, abuse, and corruption, and the other candle is over here burning like the new mission of sexual harassment. Long about early summer last year, this one here looked like it was going on fire. The sexual harassment flame was just getting stronger and stronger. And this one over here was, while we knew we had these open fraud, waste, abuse, and corruption cases, the flame was flickering. It was flickering because this one was getting bigger. And I know I have a lot of sound effects and I'm animated, but it's the way that I can help explain to you what was happening. So I knew that something was going to have to give. And the governor's office recognized it too, because they've seen what we've done with our waste, fraud, abuse, and corruption cases, and they knew that. I said, I don't want this one to get snuffed out, because this really saves money and is a huge impact. But this one is so important too, because we want to improve our culture. We want our workforce to be a place where people want to work and want to stay. We don't want people leaving. You know, I'm a public servant through and through since I was 18 years old, whether it was federal military, federal government, or state government, and I want people to want to be a part of our government to make it work right. So anyway, we got them listening, and we started looking at it, and so little by little we've made some slight changes, because you know, we've been entrusted to do this job, and I know that anybody that works with us as a partner knows that we take what we do seriously. So now we have, if you're going to notice, we highlighted it in green so you could understand. So in October, I got Bethany as general counsel, and in January of this year, I got Josh as another auditor. If you're going to audit all these state agencies and how they're handling sexual harassment and what they're doing and whether they're complying and whether they're getting it in so many days and whether so-and-so was talked to and not, you're going to have an extra auditor to be able to do that. One can't do that plus, you know, help us review 58 bank accounts of one subject in a fraud case. And then we had our one admin assistant, Miss Tony Spencer. So right now we have 10 people, not 8, 10. And at the end of this, you're going to see that after I've said what I've said, what we're essentially looking at is to get 2 more positions, which would make us 12. And those 2 positions would be 2 more investigators whose primary focus is sexual harassment investigations, but we're going to cross-train them to help with fraud, waste, abuse, and corruption investigations, which is our other mission. To accomplish the 4% and 6% budget reductions, our only administrative position, which is over here to the right, Miss Tony, that was cut. To keep our current administrative staff, we moved her into one of the 5 newly created positions. So in form, the recommendation is for 5 positions. However, in substance, we're adding 4 new positions, 2 that we have on board now, and 2, if it's all approved, that we would get to add as investigators. I don't know if I made that clear. Does anybody have a question right now, or do you want me to keep rolling into 21?
Yeah, we got a couple questions. That'd be a good place to see. Representative Prince.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. I really appreciate you guys coming in and showing. I had just a couple of questions. Since you're talking about your structure right now, we'll go to that. My question was, what you want to go to, I understand, and bringing on sexual harassment
Yes.
experts, for lack of better words. I guess you're going to call them investigators. Is that the name you guys we use? Okay. And of the ones that you have now, what's on your staff now, who's qualified to do sexual harassment investigations? I understand you do the fraud, waste, and abuse piece, but are these people trained to do sexual harassment investigations? That's question 1.
We've all been through the designated sexual harassment investigative training that we have provided to 1 male and 1 female in each of the executive branch agencies. So we've all been to that, which in essence would qualify us to do it. But we have 2 on staff, Janelle Vernon and Cedric Johnson, who have actually been to a more focused investigative training program. 2, I think I know what what you're seeing, what you're concluding is that primarily the staff that I have, they are there because they were hired to do waste, fraud, abuse, and corruption. They're like forensic accountants, forensic auditors, but they've all had a great deal of training, and they're all very bright. And so with the training that they have had, with some extra navigating and stuff, if I really had to, I could probably put most anyone on it.
Can I have one more, Mr. Chair? Okay, thank you very much for that. And but going to your the one that the slide you showed, I think about two or three, well, about three, on the return on investment piece.
Yes, sir.
I see the amount of fraud that was referred for prosecution. Do we know a number is actually prosecuted? Do we have that number?
Well,
To see what those dollars were actual came?
so the decision for prosecution rests with the Attorney General's office, who we primarily do business with, but also some of our cases go to, local DAs. And, I mean, I have to say, most of the time, they'll pick up on that too. It's very infrequent that one does not get some type of prosecutorial action. It's very infrequent.
Chairman Perkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for being here. It is it's an honor to talk to you with your focus on making sure our taxpayer monies are looked after efficiently and effectively. And thank you for running a pretty tight ship. Regarding, and going back to Representative Prince's question, the waste, fraud, abuse, and corruption mission. If I was, can you give me an example, not of a, ongoing whatever, but if I am a commissioner of ABC.
Yes, sir.
I am a commissioner of ABC, what will be a typical, a case that you would look at within my department?
Okay. Oh, I could spend the next week talking to y'all about examples.
Just do 2 minutes.
So, one that you may or may not have seen on the news in the last year and a half or two was out of Department of Juvenile Justice. There was a lady, her name was Natasha Bray. She had worked for 16 or 17 years. She was a trusted employee, a mama and a wife, and Miss Bray, as it turned out, was among some staff who the chief financial officer actually said, at the end of the year, can you tell me how we are spending our money? Not how much money do we have left, but can you tell me how we're spending our money? And so questions started being asked, and the next thing you know, they find out that Miss Bray has been paying invoices for a mobile detailing business called Lowe's Enterprises. It sounds really official, like Lowe's Home Improvement or something, but it was called Lowe's Enterprises. Well, what she had done is very craftily, she had managed to set up the business, and it was a shell company, and she set it up, and it was in her husband and her name, and for a number of years, Miss Bray was actually paying money for mobile detailing services. And I don't know about any of you, but I've never had a mobile detailing service on my car, and I don't know any state car that would deserve such. But she had been paying this. Well, when she was questioned, the next thing you know, she started shredding documents, and the next thing you know, she resigned. And within about an hour of the referral coming over to the office, we quickly determined, through looking through records and in computer documents, that she had about $225,000 had gone to the mobile detailing company over a period of years. And in the end, the investigation showed that Miss Bray was buying Victoria's Secret. She was paying her cable bill. She was funding her children's cheerleading competitive events and things like that.
Thank you for what you do.
Well, I guess just follow back up on the positions, make sure I understand. We say you're adding 5 new, but 1 is being eliminated and then reinstated again. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did y'all come up with that, or was that a recommendation made by OPB, or?
That was a recommendation made to us.
Okay. And I guess is that an adequate number for your workload right now? Or how did y'all decide that 5 was, and the way it's structured now, that's I guess adequate?
You know, I never have been a selfish person, and I've always, since I was a little girl, I've done a lot with little. And there's been times in my 17 years of working for the state that it was me and 1 or 2 others doing the same mission, except the sexual harassment stuff. So, you know, if we can grow to 12, a dirty dozen, we will not let you down.
Okay. That works for me. Just want to make sure that, you know, that it's enough and it's adequate. And I mean, I hope we don't need more. So, but I just want to make sure, so.
I really do feel like 2 more investigators.
That'll be what you need.
I'll tell you one thing. I treat them real good. I try to give them watermelon on Wednesdays in the summer.
Wait a minute, where do you get your watermelons from?
I try to remember their birthdays. We try to stop. We try to stop for Christmas. That being said, I'm so proud of the staff that I get. They're the cream of the crop. And that being said, in the last 3 years, I've lost 4 of them to the federal government because we can't do what the federal government can do for them in law enforcement retirement and stuff like that. But I try to make it a good place to work. But I'll tell you, there is not a one of them twiddling their thumbs. And I always say, we don't let moss grow under our feet in the Office of the Inspector General, because we have a lot to do with the few of us that we have to do it with.
Okay. Let's see. Chairman Barr, do you have a question?
Thank you so much for coming, ma'am. I really feel like maybe in later life I'd like to come work for you.
Well, hey, we got 2 open.
All right, sounds good. Also, I think I feel like there might be a iron fist and a velvet glove over there as well. Can you help me on the FY 20, your numbers? I guess that's not a total for, is that a total, is 5.28 million, is that total in your return on investment slide?
Oh. The 5 million
So, yes, ma'am.
for FY20. Okay, so we still got 5 or 6
Right,
months
so
left.
this is current
Yes,
to date?
that's right now.
Okay.
Yes,
Very good.
yeah.
Uh,
I know something else. I'm glad you put my attention on that chart.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I was going to tell you all what it meant for that outreach and training, even though it has 8, 18, 22, 30, 30, those are sessions. Those sessions could have as many as 5 people or as many as 700 people in them. Anytime somebody will let me come and talk and tell our story and why it's important that we're all awake as public servants, and why it's important that we've been entrusted to these positions. So we're supposed to do right. And so on average, we're talking, the little group, with what we're already doing with our fraud cases and now sexual harassment, we are talking to upwards of about 3,000 people a year saying, this is who we are, this is what we do, let us help you. If you see something, if you smell something, please, if you think it's a dirty, rotten fish, let us come help you. You don't have to have a smoking gun, just let us help you. might not be a real criminal case. It might just be a terrible need for a policy revision.
Very good. May I follow up on that?
Yes.
So with your responsibilities increasing, you know, I like the numbers here and the stories you share. I think those folks, you know, we need to go after those folks for our constituents that we represent. My question, I guess, may be a tough one. Is are the positions that are recommended? Is that going to be enough to continue with your good work on your fraud investigation, but as well be adequate for your new responsibilities?
Well, I appreciate your attentiveness and everyone's attentiveness and your question and just being engaged and listening and caring enough to listen. I feel like I said a minute ago, 2 more investigators is going to help us. It's a little early for me to stand here and say I'm going to need 4 more investigators, because we haven't even finished our 1 year into the sexual harassment mission, and we've not had time to do our first audit to see what kind of problems reveal. So Jenna and Bethany, would you agree with me? I mean, you know, if it was just raining people and we could just get people left and right, I'd say, oh, go ahead and give it to us. But we all have a responsibility to be fiscally, you know, frugal.
Sure. I just don't want to see either of those candles burn out, is my thought.
And I'm so happy that you love that analogy.
Inspector General Wallace is correct that it is a little early to see how the sexual harassment investigation piece is going to affect. However, if you notice, every time that staff has been added to our office, our return on investment has increased. So, I mean, I think if additional staff were added for the fraud, waste, and abuse portion, and I know you're talking more, is it going to fall to the wayside? But anytime you add additional staff to this office in particular, you're going to see a greater return on investment.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay. All right, anybody else? Well, thank y'all. Thank y'all for being here. Thank you for coming by and talking about what you do, and thank you for what you do.
I can't imagine not doing it. I mean, I'll do it at night, except they want to be left alone.
Well, we're excited to have you, and you know you don't get over here very much to present, so thank you, and we'll look forward to having you back.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank y'all. And for everybody else, we are adjourned for today. However, we'll meet again in the morning at 9 o'clock if everybody could be here. Thank you, we're adjourned.